Hello, everyone. My name is Rob Collins, and I am the current president of the Association of Postdoctoral Programs in Clinical Neuropsychology, also known as APPCN or APPCN. And today I'm going to be presenting on preparation and applying for neuropsychology residency for the 2021 match cycle. While the purpose of this presentation is to provide an overview of the application process for resident applicants applying to APPCN member programs for the 2021 cycle, I also want to provide you with some additional information. Today, I'm going to briefly discuss the history of APPCN as an organization related to neuropsychology training, and we'll also discuss the relationship between APPCN and what is known as the match. I'm going to touch on tangible benefits of training with an APPCN member program. And there are important dates that resident applicants must be aware of for the 2021 match cycle. And I assume that you've already reviewed some of these at the NMS website, but we're going to cover them. And then lastly, I hope to address some frequently asked questions related to the match process. I also want to mention that this presentation differs slightly from previous versions. This presentation is directed at residents for the 2021 cycle, which is also occurring during the coronavirus pandemic. Previous presentations have touched on important documents related to training in clinical neuropsychology, and many, if not all of these documents can be found on the APPCN website. And I also recommend Dr. Heffelfinger's presentation from 2018, which was related to the match, but which can be found on the APPCN YouTube channel, as that presentation has an excellent overview of the training history, what are considered neuropsychology competencies, and very importantly, what is the neuropsychology training taxonomy, which is essentially a document that sort of defines how programs can say they have either a minor or a major emphasis in training. All of those documents are very important, so I do encourage you to review them. A little bit about myself first. I am the current president of APPCN. This is my second year of my presidency, and in just about a month, there'll be a new president, Dr. Douglas Whiteside. Until the fall of 2019, I served as the neuropsychology residency director at the Michael E. DeBakey VA Medical Center in Houston, Texas. And I led that program through two specialty accreditations through the APA, both under the old training guidelines and under the new training guidelines. While I'm not currently affiliated with the training program at this time, I do want to give a shout out to my colleagues at the Houston VA. They remain a quality program, but I do admit to having a slight bias. Currently, I'm in private practice with the neurocognitive specialty group in Houston, Texas, where my focus is adult clinical and forensic. So APPCN, I think a common question for many resident applicants is, what is APPCN and what is their role in postdoctoral training or residency training? While many neuropsychology trainees are unfamiliar with APPCN, and I think most, at least until the time that they have to start looking at residency training. In actuality, APPCN has been an advocate for quality training and in neuropsychology since the early 90s. APPCN grew out of what is the Midwest Neuropsychology Consortium as an independent organization, and APPCN was a sponsor and participant in the 1997 Houston Conference on Specialty Education and Training in Clinical Neuropsychology. The Houston Conference Guidelines remain an important document in neuropsychology training. I really recommend folks familiarize themselves with the Houston Conference Guidelines. And again, in addition to the Houston Conference Guidelines, I encourage review of the neuropsychology training taxonomy. And these documents can be found at the APPCN website, appcn.org. In 2001, with a little over 50 member programs, APPCN initiated a match process. And the match process for APPCN is parallel to what occurs at the internship level with some slight differences. For APPCN, the match process was more it was in part related to creating an efficiency between matching programs and applicants together. But instead, APPCN's view and position about the match is that it actually provides a degree of protection for resident applicants. We believe that resident applicants in many ways are vulnerable to training programs who might attempt to exploit the uncertainty that applicants feel when they are trying to transition from internship to residency. And we believe that in essence, the match allows applicants to interview and meet with the programs of their choosing without having to worry about pressures related to early offers or being unable to fully participate in an interview process because it was hijacked by somebody who's trying to make a preemptive offer. APPCN member programs themselves have agreed to abide by rules related to the match process, and these rules allow a greater degree of fairness to the applicants. So why choose an APPCN program for a neuropsychology residency? And there are a variety of different reasons. Some are obvious, and maybe some not so obvious. And I do encourage residents to speak with folks who have attended APPCN member programs and get their views on that. In our opinion, we believe that APPCN represents the absolute best training programs in the United States and Canada. These programs, APPCN member programs, have agreed to provide a training experience which is consistent with the Houston Conference guidelines. They agree to provide a residency experience which is consistent with the training taxonomy for neuropsychology. And these programs have agreed to provide foundational competencies in neuropsychology. In order for these member programs to become members, they have to submit a self-study. The self-study is reviewed by a panel of neuropsychologists at the board level, and the panel reviews the program materials to ensure that the programs have the resources and other training needs in place such that a training experience will be adequate for preparation for future board certification through ABPP. Typically, in almost all cases, the training director of the APPCN program is required to be board certified. There are a couple of programs where there are consultants, but the expectation is that the training director will become board certified within a short period of time. And then, as I mentioned previously, and as I will mention again, APPCN member programs have agreed to follow a code of conduct related to recruitment and interviewing. And they've also agreed to follow a code of conduct related to a residency experience, as it were. In addition to those sort of real sort of tangible qualities about APPCN programs, these programs also have access to resources which are not available to non-member programs. APPCN has, over the years, developed and continues to update both oral and written examinations, and these are specifically meant to parallel the processes that you will encounter as you yourself become board certified in the future. APPCN programs have access to a variety of video didactics. They have live multi-site didactics. They provide consultation to programs and to residents. And when you graduate from an APPCN program, your materials for board certification through ABPP are expedited. APPCN also takes seriously issues related to diversity in all of its forms. We believe in promoting and working towards equal opportunity for training for individuals from diverse, underrepresented, and discriminated against backgrounds, which include race, ethnicity, disability, sexual orientation, gender identity, first-generation college graduates, much like myself, and international students. What is the match? And so this is a common question. I mean, most folks, at least early on, know that they have to go through an internship match, but many neuropsychology residents are surprised when they realize that there's a match also for the residency portion. The match itself was implemented by APPCN in 2001, and we supervise it, but it is administered by the National Matching Service. And as I mentioned, this is the same service that manages the psychology internship match, which is obviously supervised by APIC. But these are very, very similar processes. The main difference, of course, is that the APPCN match occurs between APPCN member programs and resident applicants who apply to these programs. It is a much smaller population of programs and individuals relative to APIC. Information related to the match can be found both on the APPCN and the APPCN links provided in this presentation. Important dates for the 2021 match cycle. And this slide is different than previous presentations. It will be updated obviously every year. In September, training directors and APPCN member programs begin to receive information from the National Matching Service related to the upcoming match, and they're required to sign a document that says that they will abide by the rules of the match in order to participate. Similarly, applicants can also begin to initiate registration, and I'm assuming that everybody who's watching this video has probably already initiated the registration. But applicants are also signing a document that says they are going to abide by the rules of the match. By approximately November 30th, NMS will publish online the list of programs that will participate in the neuropsychology match through APPCN. However, with each year, APPCN brings in new programs towards the end of the year, and I can tell you personally that about 3 have been added as APPCN member programs just over the past month. Participating programs will advertise in a variety of different ways, but the NMS site and through APPCN is going to be the final list of programs that are going to be participating in the match. You do need to look at sites because some of them will have some site-specific application materials. The next important dates to consider related to the match would occur during the INS conference, which will still happen in San Diego, although the nature of this conference will be drastically different than previous conferences, obviously because of COVID. Normally, APPCN member programs are expected to conduct interviews or to avail themselves of interviews during the INS conference. APPCN, however, has suspended all expectations for in-person interviews for the 2021 match cycle. Now, it is still possible that sites may request to meet with you in person, but there is no APPCN requirement or expectation for programs to meet either at conference or in person. We are encouraging a virtual process, obviously, this year. Some programs still may choose to conduct a lot of interviews during this time frame when they typically would. And at this point, you've probably negotiated times either during that conference timeframe or prior to, since everything is virtual and there's a little more flexibility about when things can be done. There is a reason why we encourage typically in-person interviews at conference, and that is because it's easier for applicants to travel to a common site, and you minimize all of those costs that you racked up during internship process the previous year. But there's another reason, and that is that the winter INS meeting is arguably one of the main professional development for everybody at every level activities that is going to occur on an annual basis. It's important to remain connected with your professional community, and for that reason, we also think it's important for applicants to attend INS. So even though you may not attend INS this year, I'd strongly encourage this as you move forward in your professional careers. So everybody will either have most of their interviews conducted prior to INS or during that INS week, but shortly after, everybody returns back from their virtual conference or in person if you happen to attend. On February 10th, this is the rank order list deadline for applicants and programs. And so you need to, after you get back from conference, make your list and rank order it and follow all the instructions in terms of entering your preferences. Just a week later, the results of the match are released to both applicants and program training directors. So a reasonable question that everybody should ask is how many positions are offered in the match, and maybe I can figure out what my likelihood of matching is based on those numbers. And we also think it's important to present these numbers. The numbers in this table on the left represent the 2021 numbers, and in parentheses we have the numbers from last year. As of the beginning of January, there are a total of 87 sites which have registered to offer positions within the match. That's 87 out of a total of 107 programs. I believe it's possible one or two more positions will be offered than is currently listed. So currently we know there are 121 positions offered, which is slightly fewer than last year at 129, although it is arguably an unusual year. And I would expect that this total sites 87 and 121, this is probably going to be pretty close to what the final number is going to be. Now, if you look down, we have registered. That refers to registered applicants. As of this presentation, or a couple days ago, there were about 131 applicants, resident applicants registered for the match. This is completely on par with this time last year. But this number is a little bit misleading because there are going to be more applicants. If we look at last year, by the end of the registration date and the registration deadline, it's supposed to be a hard deadline. They might shift it a little bit, but it is January 15th. So by January 15th, we expect to have this 131 will probably increase by at least 30 or 40. That would be typical. Last year, there were a lot. Of that total number, you have to understand that not everybody is necessarily going to be a strong applicant. And there is a lot of variability in terms of training and preparation. And there are historically about 30 or 40 applicants that will withdraw from the match prior to the match for a variety of different reasons. Shifting gears a little bit, what I want to do for the last portion of this presentation is to discuss strategies for the application process, answer some questions related to the match, and provide some additional information for international students. Regarding strategies, and when considering neuropsychology training at the individual level, at your resident level, each resident applicant needs to have a good understanding of the programs available and what they are offering, what training opportunities are afforded at those sites, and how does this fit in with your long-term goals. I encourage you to consider that and then to balance that against your actual training needs. You should have done a self-survey of sorts at some point, looking at where your training is strong and where you need to bolster your training. Everybody has strengths and weaknesses at every different level. I encourage all applicants to review the APPCN website for a list of member programs and the links to those training brochures. And similarly, I encourage resident applicants to look at listservs and other websites which might have information regarding non-member programs which are of sufficient quality, because there are non-member programs that are of good quality too. It is true that not all neuropsychology residency programs are APPCN programs, but the majority of them are. As I mentioned before, we have 107 member programs. Those are 107 quality programs that have the resources available to provide a really solid training experience. I have no doubt that there are some quality non-member APPCN programs, but I would advise applicants, and I advise applicants, there is much more variability in program quality on that non-member side. And residents applying to those programs, you need to do your homework about what is offered and about how successful those programs are in terms of providing those experiences and in terms of the things that they say they're going to offer. Once a resident applicant has determined which program that they're going to apply to, if they have additional questions, they should feel free to reach out to those training programs directly. Just as applicants face a degree of uncertainty about the whole match process, I can tell you that programs do too. And programs are typically happy when prospective applicants reach out to them directly with questions. It sort of signals to those programs that there's a level of interest which is more than superficial. A common question amongst applicants, of course, is how many programs should I apply to? And there's not a magic number. Based on our historical data, you need to apply to 8 to 15 programs. That's optimal, with less than 8 representing an increased chance of not matching, and with greater than 15, meaning that you're probably not going to have a significant benefit for applying to more than those. 8 to 15 is the sweet spot. I know that represents a range, but that range, you're also going to look at that through the lens of your own training experiences, through the lens of how qualified that you are. And you need to look at the programs that you are applying to as well, because programs, even though all programs in APPCN have a minimal level of training resources that is guaranteed to prepare a resident for future board certification in independent practice in neuropsychology. There are differences between those programs as well in terms of what they offer, the research experiences, the populations. And you need to make sure also that you're competitive to get into those programs as well. You need to do a self-assessment. Continuing on in terms of strategies, and I'm sure that everybody watching this has probably already prepped and reviewed their CVs, but you can still go back and take a double and a triple look at your CV. You need to make sure that it is accurate, that it clearly conveys your training experiences. There's no perfect formatting style, but I do recommend that resident applicants obtain a CV or CV examples from residents who have navigated this process successfully. You're going to be challenged with a way to clearly highlight your training experiences without embellishing those experiences. You have to remember that these materials, your materials, are going to be reviewed by board certified training directors, seasoned professionals, and they are going to be able to suss out those embellishments. I'm pretty sure of it. And then when you are listing your publications, there are programs that prefer that you take your peer review public articles and you separate them from published abstracts or book chapters. They're not necessarily viewed as the same. And so just clearly and honestly indicate what you have. In securing your letters of recommendation, and at this point in your training, folks have worked with a variety of training supervisors, and you need to think about those folks you've worked with and select carefully. Typically, neuropsychology residency programs want to see letters from individuals who know you well, who have worked with you, and who are willing to comment on this. This is going to include your psychology or neuropsychology mentor in graduate school. perhaps your dissertation chair if it's not your mentor, internship supervisors who can speak to your proximal competency and growth areas, particularly as related to neuropsychology. It does help to have letters from board certified neuropsychologists. Some sites might require work samples. And while it is appreciated that the work samples that you are going to submit represent a supervised product, you should also understand that seasoned professionals are going to review this document and they could ask you questions and get at your knowledge about the case. So you're submitting a relatively polished document, but you should be prepared to answer questions about that if you are required to submit one. All sites that you're going to apply to through APPCN are going to require a statement of interest, and you need to make sure that your statement of interest applies to the program to which you're applying to. As a residency director, every year it was not uncommon to see a generic statement of interest which didn't fit strongly with my program, or to have a statement of interest which accidentally lists incorrect training activities or working with personnel who don't even work at that particular institution. I'm not suggesting that you have to have or create a highly individualized and personalized statement of interest for each site, but you do have to make sure that the sites reviewing your statement of interest feel as though it were personalized for them. And so it's up to you to find that balance. And once again, I just want to say this, and I'm sure that you know, please proofread your materials before a program has an opportunity to meet you to see what a great applicant that you are. They only have the written materials that you have submitted in order to form an opinion. Please proofread. What I want to do next is cover some of the common questions that arise each year as related to the match. So the first question I'd like to address is, what is the difference between APA specialty accreditation and being an APPCN member program? Are there consequences for attending one versus the other, or no consequences at all? First, APPCN membership is not the same as obtaining specialty accreditation through the APA Commission on Accreditation. While APPCN membership requires a self-study process and that programs are going to adhere to organizational rules and guidelines, this is not the same thing as being accredited. And APPCN has no regulatory authorities over member programs beyond ensuring that those programs must adhere to organizational rules and guidelines. Specialty accreditation in neuropsychology through the APA is arguably a much more rigorous process. Those programs have a degree of accountability for both proximal and distal training goals, meaning that those programs say that you're going to do that within your program, and these are the milestones that residents have to meet at different parts of the program. All of that is reviewed at the proximal level and then also at the distal level about in terms of what are the long-term goals and outcomes that the program is asserting. So there is a level of oversight for an APA specialty accredited program that does not exist for APPCN member programs. As far as consequences, attending an APPCN member program versus a specialty accredited program, there's a little difference. Currently within APPCN, again, we have about 107 programs, and approximately 19 or 20 of those programs also have a specialty accreditation. And the majority of specialty accredited programs are APPCN member programs in neuropsychology as well. But attending one versus the other will not have an impact on your pathway to board certification, and both are recognized as APPCN and specialty accredited programs will both receive expedited review of materials when you apply. for board certification. Additional questions. Although the first one here is not a question for this year, it has to do with in-person interviewing versus virtual. And as I've already mentioned, virtual interviewing has been recommended and encouraged by APPCN, and we have suspended our expectation that programs avail themselves of in-person interviewing at a conference. I do want to say that it's important for applicants to be prepared for unscheduled interviews, which could happen. And the thing about unscheduled interviews, which are occurring during an intern's work week, is that it creates for a hectic schedule versus scheduled interviews, which could occur typically during the conference time. If you're now doing all of your interviewing as an intern, it's possible that you're doing this during a lunch hour. It's possible you don't have protected time for these interviewings, and I would hope that you would work with your training director at the internship level to get some protected time for these interviews. We also would encourage you to keep a professional jacket or top at work, or a lab coat, in case you have an unscheduled interview that you have to attend, in order that you could continue to have a professional looking appearance. On the flip side of that, we've also recommended to programs and advised programs that they consider a resident applicant's protected time while they're currently an intern is probably not protected, right? Or it does not include protected time to interview. And that they might appear harried, they might appear, like they're just running from a group in order to get in and then to complete an interview, and that is a real possibility. So again, we have encouraged residency programs that are APPCN members to consider those internship related scheduling demands, which don't typically happen if everybody's interviewing during INS. The next common question is, do I need to complete requirements for the doctoral degree in order to apply to an APPCN residency program? It is important that resident applicants check with the individual programs for their site-specific requirements. There is some variability. You should only apply if you will complete your degree requirements prior to the start of your training, the training date start. Many programs will accept a resident application even if they've not completed their dissertation or have remaining coursework, with the understanding that these requirements will be completed prior to the beginning of residency. For most applicants, however, the most significant unmet degree requirement is your dissertation. Programs may ask applicants specific questions about the status of your dissertation. Is the data collected, proposed, defended, etc.? And you should be prepared to answer those questions. If you have not completed your dissertation, you need to include a doctoral program verification from your training director from your doctoral program that is going to assert that you will complete your dissertation in time. And if there are any hangups or anything like that, I really do encourage open communication with your program that has accepted you for residency, so that they don't have a surprise also that, oh, hey, doesn't look like I'm going to complete my dissertation. You got to keep all parties advised every step along the way. I want to address two more questions before moving on to comments on international students. And again, I encourage all reviewing this presentation to review the facts and other materials on the APPCN website. So probably the most common question we receive is related to applicants who apply to both APPCN member programs as well as programs outside of the match. If this applies to you, it is quite possible that you will receive a non-match offer prior to completing interviews, which you may have already scheduled with other programs. In this scenario, an applicant will have to make a decision as to remaining in the match and being able to complete the remaining neuropsychology interviews versus accepting the preemptive offer. I would caution applicants that some APPCN programs will pressure you to make a decision without consultation from others, or may require you to make a decision on the spot or within a very restricted time period. This doesn't apply to all non-APPCN programs. It certainly wouldn't be an APPCN program, but it does apply to some non-APPCN member programs, and it happens on an annual basis. I would advise, if you receive such pressure from a non-member program, that this activity directly exploits a power differential that occurs between a program and an applicant who is looking for a residency. And it is, in my opinion, at least predatory. And I think that if a program does that, you should understand that they may be a symptomatic representation or characteristic of the training site that is offering the position yet pressuring you without even allowing you to consider offers, complete interviews from other sites. Nevertheless, should an applicant receive a competitive non-match offer, and they do exist, we do have some recommendations. First, you will need to consider how you would rate the non-APPCN program amongst the other programs, and you should make a list to determine whether you have sufficient information at this stage in the process in order to make your decision. If you've been offered a position early on, there's an opportunity cost in that if the program wants you to make a decision quickly, what are you missing out on in terms of other additional interviews? You should ask to be at least able to complete interviews with other programs. If you are not ready to make a decision or are not interested in the non-match program, you should just thank them for their interest and tell them you're remaining in the match due to your interest in other programs. However, if you are interested in the non-APPCN program, and you're also interested in the APPCN programs as well, and this does happen, there are basically three scenarios that can play out. The first scenario is pretty straightforward. If you receive a non-match offer and that non-match offer represents your most preferred program, you're going back to your rank order list and they're number one, then you should probably accept that offer. If you accept that offer, then you are required, as being part of the match, to withdraw from the match prior to the rank order list deadline. That is to say that if you've already accepted a position, you cannot participate in the match. You must formally withdraw. But this also represents an easy scenario. The second and third scenarios are a little more complicated. In the second scenario, an applicant is participating in the match and remains interested in several APPCN programs, but that applicant also receives an offer from a non-match program that they would rank number 3 or lower. So again, this goes back to creating your rank order list of match and non-match programs. So in this scenario, you receive an offer from a non-match program that is ranked at number 3 or lower. In this scenario, the applicant is encouraged to negotiate with a non-match program. You should let the non-match program know that you remain interested in their program. And if they commit to holding your offer until after the match results are announced, February 17th, you're not asking them to hold off long. So if you would ask them to just hold your position, and that if you don't match with one of your number 1, number 2, number 3, that you would then commit to taking their position. So for example, if you have a non-match program ranked at number 4, okay, and then you rank programs 1 through 3 on your rank order list, and only 1 through 3, with an understanding that the non-match program actually represents the furthest that you would fall in your rankings. So it is technically a number 4, but not in the match. In this situation, and if you do this, we do strongly encourage you to get the non-match program's commitment to this process in writing. In this option, your best interests are served as you're able to consider all training opportunities, complete all of those important professional development opportunities in terms of interviewing and moving through that process. So you're able to do all of this, you're able to have your top 3 represented, and that non-match offer is competitive still at number 4, but they have to wait so that you can also see how you compete with your top 3 choices. The last scenario applies if you receive an offer from a non-match program that, say, represents your number 2 overall rank, and your number 1 choice is an absent member program. In this scenario, the applicant can approach their number 1 absent site and inform them that you're my number 1 choice, but that you have received an offer from a non-match program, and that non-match program represents your number 2. So it's not that you receive a non-match offer, but you are saying to that program that this represents your number 2 option. If you do this, the program director of the absent program can tell you if you rank high enough that you will rank with them if you rank them first. And that is the only thing that they can communicate to you. So if you've received an offer outside of the match and it's your number 2 choice, we do encourage you to contact your preferred absent program and inform them of your situation. I want to be clear about this too. We are not saying that if you receive an offer from any non-absent program that you can use that information to see where you stand with other programs. We're not saying that. And in fact, that would be a little disingenuous if an applicant did that. And what resident applicants should also understand that a neuropsychology training director can ask you who you received that from, and they can also contact that training director as well. And again, this last scenario should only occur if you receive an offer from your second choice, which is a non-absent program. Lastly, in terms of the match, I just want to touch on consequences for participating in the match and then reneging on the outcome. Resident applicants and member programs understand that the match is considered binding. If you have submitted a rank order list, you are bound to respect the results of the match. Applicants and programs both must accept the match results, and failure for either to do so would be viewed as unprofessional to the larger neuropsychology community, and such an activity would be just viewed negatively within the professional community as well. It is understood that there are circumstances which arise either related to dissertation not being completed or other professional issues. And if those do occur at the very, very earliest possible date, you should notify a program if there's going to be an issue, such as also with a program. If something drastic were to happen, they would lose funding, they also need to reach out to applicants. I can think of no instances since I've been on the board when a program has reneged on a spot. I'm aware of some instances where there were consideration because of funding, and I can think of only a handful of instances over the past 10 years where an applicant was unable to attend. Lastly, if you are an international student who completed doctoral training outside of the United States or Canada, you are strongly encouraged to contact individual training directors to confirm that they can accept international students. It is not uniform across institutions. I would also recommend further discussion with these training directors regarding any previous challenges that they have had in bringing on international students. It is possible that you will have to initiate verification of your doctoral degree either through the World Education Service or the Comparative Education Service. You should do this earlier as opposed to later in the process. Applicants should prepare to have transcripts and letters of recommendation translated to English, and it's possible that an applicant may need to demonstrate proficiency in English for various sites. For international students who completed doctoral training inside the United States or Canada, but who require a visa, may need to work with your doctoral university to determine if your current visa will cover you. And if not, you may need to follow up with appropriate organizations to determine what your options are. If you have family, you need to further explore whether visas are required for family members. And it is important to consider all of this also in the context of future licensing requirements. If you have a plan to live in the United States or Canada, you might want to do some further investigation. And of course, as applying to both international students as well as students who want to train from the United States to Canada or vice versa, there are COVID restrictions in place, and many of these are country dependent, and there may be institutional requirements as well. So there's an extra layer that everybody's going to have to navigate, but even more so for international students. Final slide, right? So normally this slide would feature a picture of the breakfast that we're going to offer the applicants, and there's a nice little sort of get together just prior to the conference that we hope to reorganize and reconstitute for next year. But I do want to encourage everybody to participate in the conference. Many of you will still be interviewing during that time frame, and please participate in socialization activities, and really socialization activities that are geared towards you, resident applicants. You are in the final steps of a long professional journey in just a short period of time. You are going to be an independent practicing neuropsychologist, and you have a cohort of individuals between 150 to 200 folks that will have similar experiences, and we'll want to discuss those as well. I know that many student-led organizations like ANST and other ones host social activities, and I think they're going to have online socializations. And historically, APPCN is happy to provide swag and all kinds of goodies for those organizations to give away, and that is also in place this year. So there's a little bit of an incentive to attend. For better or worse, you are the resident applicant class that is applying and moving through this process in the time of COVID, and that is in and of itself going to be a unique and memorable experience, but also one to have a little bit of pride about also, because navigating this during this period of time is more complicated. There's just no doubt about it. And there's something to be said for that. So, and beyond that, if you have any last minute questions, I would encourage everybody to visit appcn.org, and you can reach out to any of the board of director members. You could even email me, and I will email you back. Please don't inundate me fully with emails, though. But then also your internship supervisors, and you may be already on internship affiliated with a program, but reach out to the folks that have done this, reach out to the folks that are part of the APPCN community, and they are more than willing to answer questions and assist you through all of the different challenges that you're going to continue to face over the next couple months. But I wish everybody fortune and luck as you move through this, and I hope to see everybody at conference in person next year. Bye-bye.